Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Business Talks. I am your host. In today's video, we're going to discuss ICE. ICE is on the move. They are in now Aurora, Colorado. Aurora, Colorado. I don't know why I say Aurora. Aurora, Colorado. And they are taking down the Ventinagra or Guerra gang. My tongue tied is is real today. Anyway, um, so they're in Aurora today and yesterday they were on the move and taking down these gangs and people from Venezuela and Colombia that's taken over Colorado. Uh, Donald Trump. It looks like Donald Trump is starting to get his hands around what's going on in the spending and Elon Musk with the Doge efficiency. And I found a damning document, you guys. This document tells us about U.S. governmental spending, what they've been doing in the U.S. and spending our tax dollars on. And it's unreal. Amount of unnecessary spending that the government has been doing for the last probably 40 years. And we never questioned it. We just said, okay, our taxes, it went up 1 to 2%, and we never really questioned why our taxes was going up. It's just, okay, this is the federal government. They need our money, I guess. So anyway, we'll take a look at the amount of spending that they're doing, and it's frivolous. Okay, so that's all on today's episode of Business Talks. Something like this. Looks a little bit like I can't miss. Hey, this is what you call a bad. What? This is what you call a bad. Looks a little something like this. Looks a little bit like I can't miss. Hey, this is what you call a bad. What? This is what you call a bad. You guys put in the chat. Let me know where you're viewing from. I see we have Celeste Hodges in the building. What is good? Celeste is tuning in from Texas. She is saying Pam Bondi is going to be tough. I hope they stop the federal money train. Me too. Toy Mafia in the building. What is good, Toy Mafia? It's great to see you. Wyoming gal. What is good? Justin Thompson. What is good? Yavar. Yo. Kevin Walker is in the chat. Jim C, good morning to you. Foxy 2, Roxy, good afternoon. Samuel Matthews is in the building. Rob Negus, happy Friday Eve to you. And Lexi is in the building. You guys continue to put in the chat where you're viewing from. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Put comments, like the button, smash the like button, and make sure you share this video. Okay, it helps me with YouTube algorithm. I'm planning to drop another video this weekend, and this video is called the most ratchetest moments of Tiffany Henyard. Okay, so that compilation, I'm going to try to get it done Friday, so hopefully I'll drop it Friday. Anyway, happy Friday Eve to you. Okay, I'm not going to keep you guys for long, but this is a funny thing I want to share with you. Okay, so Cat Williams, he was in Phoenix, Arizona a couple of days ago, and he got in a little spat with some of his the people in the audience. I guess one of the guys was mad about what Cat Williams was talking about. Cat Williams, he is pro-America, even though I don't know if he cared too much for Donald Trump, but he is pro-America and or pro-American. And he was talking about what Donald Trump was doing and border patrol. And so one of the audience members got mad at him of what he said. And we're going to take a look at that. To me, I thought it was hilarious. And some people might get mad at this kind of stuff. I know we have a lot of immigrants that's in that area, and they might be legal and they might not be. But You guys take a look at this.
Because I'm saying, you think I'm just in Mexico and I'm defending America. Because are you Mexican? Do you know where Mexico is? No, this ain't Mexico. It used to be Mexico, motherfucker, and now it's Phoenix, goddammit. USA, 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 USA. Yeah, fuck you back, nigga. I bet you don't leave here and go to Mexico, motherfucker. Go get you some chicken speech. I'll put you cabrón.
And you guys, do you know what's going on with these girls sitting on the stage on the floor? I don't understand. To Cat Williams, he be doing some crazy stuff. But anyway, I thought this was hilarious. I thought this was hilarious because somebody in the audience pointed out, "Oh, this used to be Mexico, but it's not. It's America now." You don't go over to Mexico and say, "Oh, USA, USA." No, we're vacationing in Mexico, and so we're going over there because we like, whatever type of customs they have, the food and the drinks and stuff like that. So that's why we go to Mexico. But and we go there to vacation. We're not going there to move. And some people have moved to Mexico that I know, but this was back in the day, like in the 80s and 90s. They moved to Mexico. I don't know if they're still over there or not, but anyway, I thought this was hilarious.
No, nigga, do you know where you at, nigga? USA! 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 I don't give a fuck! No, motherfuckers think they can live in this country and then still be allegiance to another fucking country. If you love another country more than you love America, motherfucker, then get to step into that bitch.
That will just keep it back.
So if you love Mexico, bitch, get the fuck over there. And as for my Mexican American homies, viva la revolution! Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what's so?
Who's got the Statue of Liberty? I guess that's what that is, or what that is.
You don't know what my family did for this country, bitch. You ain't did shit, nigga. Fuck, we were slaves, bitch. Y'all just work like that at the landscapers, motherfucker.
Somebody must then tell him about Cat Williams, because Cat Williams will roast you like really bad. So they didn't give him the warning, like, hey, don't heckle this guy because he is dangerous. Cat Williams is dangerous on the mic. Big ups to Cat Williams. He's representing. This is, the sentiment with Americans, even Mexican Americans. How in the world are you over here in this country saying no, don't deport us or whatever, and you're still holding up the Mexican flag, the government that decided to starve you out, don't give you jobs, don't give you running water in some of your villages, and so that's why you decided to come over here to search in a better life, in a better living, and you're still holding allegiance, like Cat Williams said, to Mexico or wherever you're from. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so shout out to Cat Williams. I truly thought that was hilarious. Anyway, so do you guys remember this story last year? Okay, last year, these Venezuelan gang robbed the jewelry store in Denver, a city which is a sanctuary for illegals. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember this, but this is the story. And they're going around this Trinidad gang. Let me start pronouncing that right. Trinidad. Trinde Araga gang. That's how you pronounce it. They were going around not only robbing jewelry stores, but they were also going around robbing gun stores. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember that, but I shared that on one of my live streams last year. Okay, so this is the story of them robbing this jewelry store. This jewelry store been in Denver for about 40 years. Let me see. Why didn't it play? Oh, it's going to the other. Okay, let me just share this.
Fleeing to the back, Munoz able to grab her kids and escape.
My mom and my cousin closed the door as I grabbed my 18-month-old baby.
Her mom, Lydia Tena, tried to hit the panic button before one of the robbers attacked her.
They hit her in the back of her head with the gun 3 times. They also hit my cousin Magdalena in the back of the head. She felt like they were going to kill her after they hit her 3 times with the gun in her head. And she, one of the times, tried to move to push the panic button. And they told her that if she moved at all once more, that they were going to kill her and they were going to kill my cousin.
Within another minute, cameras in the back capturing 4 more men entering the back door.
They had white gloves and they were all loading their guns.
Munoz says one assaulted her sister, who walked into all the chaos.
He grabbed her by her hair, pulled her up the stairs, and told her not to move or he was going to kill her. And while he had her face down to the floor, he yanked all of her personal jewelry off.
The 8 men wiping out the store that's been here for 24 years in a matter of 3 minutes.
Everything, they just sort of started putting it in backpacks and duffel bags.
Denver police confirming they are looking for these 8 Hispanic men.
It's organized crime and their accent is from Venezuela.
So, and this is a story that happened last year sometime. I think it was back in September. Okay, we just assumed that they were part of the Trinidad Aguilera gang. I'm not for sure, but they were from Venezuela. They're doing these organized crime sprees across, not just in Denver or Aurora, Colorado. They're in Michigan. I live in Michigan. They were robbing high-end homes. And they said they come in, they're very organized. They come in, cut off the alarm and get in and get out. They have gloves and face masks, and so they know what they're doing. So they come in and God knows what, who's buying the stolen merchandise from them. But I'm pretty sure they got to connect where they could offload some of this merchandise. Anyway, so now you have ICE. ICE is in Colorado right now. They said they already arrested 100 members of the Venezuela gang targeted, and they're saying they are targeting apartment complex to apprehend these people. And let me see. I don't know why this is not giving me a hard time in playing. But what I was saying is the U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement targeted for arrests more than 100 alleged members of the Venezuela gang Tren Aragua during an early morning raid at the apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado on Wednesday. Is this the apartment complex that the authorities denied, saying, oh, they didn't take over the apartment complex? Remember they lied to us? Donald Trump mentioned it when he was debating Kamala Harris. And they said, oh, no, we haven't heard such story. And then after he said the story, it went, we've been hearing it in the news for quite some time. And then they tried to deny it on national TV. And coming to find out, it is true. Okay, so it says dozens of federal agents were seen going door to door to speaking to residents in their apartments. ICE was supported by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive, Customs and Border Protection, and the FBI, the agency said. So, and they have to do this because, they're supposedly this is a gang, so of course they have weapons too. So they have to have a effort with other law enforcement agencies, and this is what they had to say.
And federal agents are ramping up their search.
You guys put in the chat. I want to make sure you can hear this. Okay. Put in the chat.
For illegal immigrants in the Denver metro area. Authorities say 100 people targeted in raids were violent criminals, including members of a Venezuelan gang. ICE reports more than 8,700 people have been arrested nationwide since raids started last week. Let's bring in ABC's Mola Lenghi from Centennial, Colorado with more on this. Mola, you've seen these raids firsthand. What does it look like when this goes down, and how does it compare to what you're hearing from the Department of Homeland Security?
Well, Diane, federal agents really casting a wide net, at least here in the Denver area. We saw sweeps yesterday beginning around 6 a.m. These are federal agents made up of ICE, made up of the FBI, made up of DEA, saturating neighborhoods, communities, entire apartment complexes. Those raids beginning around 6 a.m. and kind of going throughout the entire day, as you mentioned, targeting about 100 people just yesterday. ICE agents saying they are targeting the, quote, violent criminal aliens in these raids. What we saw at one apartment complex, for example, yesterday was ICE agents going essentially door to door, knocking on these doors, asking people who answered the door how many people were inside, asking for documentation, asking for ID. At one of the apartment complexes, we obtained some ring video that shows some of these exchanges between ICE agents knocking on these doors and the residents who answer the doors.
Quick question. Do you have any dealer, any drugs in the house? Can we come in and check? No? Speak English? Okay.
Of course.
Is there anyone in the house? Safety?
No. No, it's just me and my dogs.
Okay.
Have a good night.
All right, thank you.
Well, law enforcement sources tell us at this particular sweep at that apartment complex that we saw yesterday, they had warrants for 2 apartment residences, 2 units. But as we saw and as residents told us, they were kind of more going door to door, knocking on many doors throughout. We even saw them stopping cars that were going in and out of the apartment complexes, questioning residents. The way that ICE agents later explained this was based on their investigations. Some of the people they were targeting who they believed were in this apartment complex tend to hop around from apartment to apartment, moving around. And so that was sort of the reasoning why they felt the need to knock on multiple doors, kind of canvass the entire unit. But we're seeing a lot of this throughout the Denver and Aurora areas, in neighborhoods, in communities, and some of these apartment complexes.
And Mola, how significant is the scale of these raids for the Denver area? And do you expect them to continue?
Well, pretty unprecedented around here. Folks who have lived here for many years say they haven't seen anything like this. When you do see one of them happening for, like the one we saw yesterday at that apartment complex just outside Denver in Aurora, you'll see dozens of federal agents canvassing an entire apartment complex, pretty much shutting it down, multiple units on scene for several hours. So it's certainly a pretty significant scene when you see it. And the anticipation is that these sweeps do continue as the Trump administration essentially attempts to make good on their promise to crack down on illegal immigration, as well as the drug enforcement, not just here in Colorado, but really throughout the country, Diane.
All right, Mola Lenghi in Centennial, Colorado. Mola, thank you.
They're going through sweeping certain complexes because they have what would we call it? Warrants out for their arrests. Let me just stop this. They have warrants out for these people arrests. Okay, so who could blame it? Blame these custom immigration officers. You can't get mad because they're fulfilling the promise that Donald Trump has made to the American people. I think everybody is glad about it. We're trying to, but a lot of people that lives in those type of areas and you dated with illegal aliens and they're doing crime in their neighborhood. I bet you they were like prisoners in their own home, scared to go out. Some of these people were scared to go out. You have some families that lost other family members to illegal immigrants or illegal aliens. So people feel a sigh of relief. This is another story that I'm sharing with you. That's the news. ABC7 Denver was actually on like a Zoom call or FaceTime call when ICE entered their home.
Hasta ahora está con la
Estamos con la otro apartamento, entonces si necesitas estudiar, a mí no me importa, pero lo que voy a hacer es que necesitas cierrar la puerta. Aunque cierro la puerta, enciendes. Ok, excelente. Ok, perfecto. Muy bien, ok, muchas gracias. No, gracias a ustedes. Disculpa por no abrir, la verdad es que no. Ya. Ok, disculpe. Ya, hija, tranquila, mi amor.
Ya, mi amor, no te preocupes.
Disculpa, pasen bien.
¿Están bien? ¿Todo bien?
Sí, solo que tengo a mi niña llorando. Ella está súper asustada al ver toda esta gente caminando. No llores, mi amor, no llores.
And so it sounds like that they was knocking on the door. ICE was knocking on the door. Whoever federal agents was knocking on the door, and they wouldn't open the door, and maybe they tried to force themselves in. And it says, my husband told them our papers are printed. And so they had, I guess they had their papers or whatever, and to make sure that they actually are legal residents. What they needed to see was proof that we can live here legally. And so maybe they wanted to see a lease and actually documentation that they are in the United States legally. So ICE is not playing. The FBI is not playing. DEA is not playing. They are going to get these people out of the United States. Okay, and this story is from the Colorado Newsline, and it's just corroborating the other stories. This one video was posted to social media by the Drug Enforcement Agency Rocky Mountain Division, showed agents deploying a smoke grenade outside an apartment building as part of what it said was an execution of a search warrant in support of Department of Homeland Security operations taking place throughout the metro area this morning or yesterday morning. And they had a separate post from the ICE Denver field office confirmed that the agents from the DEA and the Federal Bureau of Investigations, Custom and Border Patrol, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and Explosive, and the U.S. Marshals participated in the operations, which was to target 100 plus members of the violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. And so they were saying Aurora, sprawling, diverse suburbs of 400,000 residents in Denver, and it's saying pursuing mass deportation campaign and a nationalist vision, America for Americans only, have made a series of sensational allegations that the gang has invaded and conquered Aurora, a sprawling, diverse suburb of Denver. Far-right political figures have falsely claimed that the crime has skyrocketed and Aurora since the new immigrants arrived. In fact, consistent with national trends, crime rates have declined there and in Colorado as a whole since 2021. Okay, so but you can't explain that. So this is Colorado Newsline. We don't be surprised if this news line is printed by liberal media, of course. And so they're saying no, this is not happening. The crime is actually going down versus 2022 or 2021. It's actually going down, but you can't explain why we have all these videos out here of this gang terrorizing their neighbors. You can't explain that. Anyway, so they posted this video. And you know what? They're just regurgitating what the mainstream news media have been saying. Oh, it's because of the slumlord. This is why the apartment building was taken over. But as you can see, DEA is out there and they're trying to find these people. DEA is not going to actually go and make waste all these resources if they don't have hard evidence that these individuals are in the supposed area. They're just not going to do it. So I mean, the news outlet, the news paper could say, "Oh no, these are false claims," and they're not saying it's false claims that ICE and all the other federal agents are there. They're just saying, "No, this haven't been happening." They're just sensationalizing what they've been talking about in the media. Okay, whatever. Anyway, and then speaking of, as far as the mainstream media being controlled by government, okay, this was just broke yesterday, okay, political. Let me just share this with you. And this is what Elon Musk and, Doge have been doing. They've been searching to find out, okay, who is actually doing this frivolous spending. This is Donald Trump posted this yesterday. It says, it looks like billions of dollars have been stolen at USAID and other agency, much of it going to the fake news media as a payoff for creating good stories about Democrats. The left-wing rag known as Political seems to have received $8 million. I wouldn't be surprised if we find more newspapers associated with receiving aid from the federal government. What happened to independent journalism? Why would you have why would you be subsidized by the federal government? It says, did the New York Times receive money? Who else did? This could be the biggest scandal of them all, perhaps the biggest in history. The Democrats can't hide from this one. Too big, too dirty. And he's absolutely right. too big, too dirty. When they're talking about draining the swamp, that's exactly what they're doing. I posted this yesterday. If you guys are not following me on X, follow me. I know I missed yesterday. You got to charge it to my head, not my heart. I had a whole bunch of stuff going on in my business, so I couldn't make the live stream. And today they got the school shut down. I don't know if you could hear my kids in the background. They're supposed to be cleaning up, but of course, when the cat's away, the mouse will play. But you follow me on Twitter. I'm most, or not Twitter, but X. I'm most of the time I pretty much stay active when I can. And I posted this once again. Elon Musk has exposed that our tax dollars are going to spread messaging of propaganda, political. The jig is up. Your jig is up. You will no longer receive our damn money for your fake ass independent journalism. Okay. And it says Doge cancel politicals government funding after 8 million in subscription contracts revealed. Okay. They revealed this not yesterday. And I don't know, you guys put in chat, what do you feel about this? I mean, we always said, okay, news media, they have they've been spreading messaging of propaganda to us. And it is, it seems to me that now we can't just say, oh, this is just a conspiracy theory. Now we have proof that that's exactly what's been going on. And this is from CNN. CNN saying it's a conspiracy theory. White House says it would cancel 8 million in political subscriptions after a false right-wing conspiracy theory spreads. But no, it was actually. Let me just now you got political defense government $8 million spent on subscription after fiery Caroline Leavitt press conference. So they're going around saying, no, it's a conspiracy theory. They got to get ahead of it. Oh no, it's a conspiracy theory. That's just right-wing news media. No, but the right-wing news media didn't publish this. The initial story came from, let me just put it on my and actually you see Donald Trump didn't post that to this morning. I saw this initial story. I think I was on Yahoo News when I saw the initial story. So what are they saying here? Are they saying that yeah, I think it's from Sean Birch. He published this at around 3 p.m. yesterday. And so I guess they're saying, oh no, this is a government right-wing conspiracy theory. Is this a video? Let me see. Okay, listen to this. The Trump administration focused on false narrative that political receive USA funds follows a erroneous claim by Kyle Becker, a conservative political commentator, on Wednesday. In the extract, Becker tied the Tuesday report from Semaphore that showed political staffers hadn't been paid over a technical error. That was subsequently fixed to the U.S. Spending. No, that they're doing this. This is incorrect. I do follow Kyle Becker on X, and actually, I don't think Kyle Becker mentioned this. I think it was Tim Pool, and he mentioned, wouldn't it be funny if we found out that uh, uh, news media outlets were receiving funding from the federal government. And then and because they were talking about this technical error, that the staffers haven't been received. And it says the subsequently fixed to USspending.gov page shows Politico received $8.2 million across 237 transactions. Fun fact, at Politico receive U.S. aid funds, Becker said via X, everything makes sense now. Now, U.S. government spending is just a query anybody you can have access to, and you could search different organizations or who receives your tax dollars. It's public information. All you need to know is to know how to operate USspending.gov. I use it only to when I do government contract bids for one of my businesses, just to look up past history stuff. But why are you even on there, Political? Why do you receive anything from government funding? What did you bid on? What was the contract? I'm just wondering. So if you don't receive any type of aid, why are you on USspending.gov? You wouldn't be on there if you don't receive government funding. You guys put it in the chat. Let me know what you think. So they're trying to dog walk this story back to say, oh no, this is right-wing conspiracy theory. No, it sounds like it's some shit in the game. Okay, they're trying to cover it up. Jim Miller saying $8 million could have built 10 very nice homes in North Carolina. Hanging AZ saying, hey, yo, a sheriff of YouTube in Canada, they not even embarrassed to have their entire budget paid by the federal government. Then they promote lockdowns and more shots as advertised. That to me is wild. And people are like, oh my God, Trump is so bad. Like, why is he bad? He's trying to save you money. He's trying to save anybody that's not on board with you paying like little to no taxes. Something must be. You either don't pay taxes or something must be wrong with you up in here. You must have Trump derangement syndrome. Speaking of Trump derangement syndrome, I got to share this with you because I think it's hilarious. It's just, this is a hilarious post. So hilarious.
To 10, with 10 being Nazi. How has the election made you feel on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being Nazi? My name is Dr. Nick Peterson, and I specialize in those suffering from TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. Hello.
You guys put it in the chat. I want to make sure you can hear this.
I'm Dr. Peterson. How are you? Well, Donald Trump is a felon. Nope. I asked how you were doing. The majority of Americans can mentally handle election results on both sides of the aisle. However, there's this small, albeit growing, group of, I don't want to say Americans, but people that are just disconnected from reality. Fascist. And honestly, it makes diagnosing these people a whole lot easier. I just check their social media. Gone are the days when you just search your symptoms on WebMD at home by yourself. Now they record their symptoms and post them for the world to see. The haircut is also a dead giveaway. So, what brings you in today? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's the orange democracy-destroying, Putin-loving dictator. All right, so mental illness. They are completely blind to the fact that their absurd actions and ideologies were a big factor in their party's loss. Let me ask you this. Do you even know what a democracy is? Follow-up question. Do you know how Kamala Harris became the nominee? I know you're a deplorable Nazi fascist bigot. Okay, neat. Turns out that calling half the country Nazis for 4 years was not a winning strategy. And yet somehow, not even Cardi B could save him. Do you realize what I'm going through? Yep, delusions. I am losing my right to vote? What? Where are you getting your information? Whoopi Goldberg? Well, what's the remedy, you might be wondering? Well, if you ask me, it's a history lesson in Jesus, but the pharmacy doesn't offer those. I prescribe them a brain, and I send them to trybrain.com for more information. Well, I'll show you. I'm moving to Canada. That'd be great. And I'll be shaving my head. Oh, that's... no. And one last thing. I'm going on a sex strike. Your loss. Oh, no. How is the election?
You guys, to me, that was so funny. But yeah, this is what, Trump derangement syndrome is getting us. And, so anything that might be to or advantageous to your pocket or, your cause or whatever, since Trump is doing it, they hate him so much. And now they hate Elon a lot too. It's always going to be bad. It might be the greatest plan ever in the history of the United States. But it's the person that's delivering the goods and services. So they hate it. They hate whatever ideas Trump is coming up with. Okay. So I thought that was hilarious. Now, this is more funny news since we're talking about spending and customs and stuff like that. But this is funny. Now, I just came across this. I was doing my research for the topics for today, and I came across this, and it says Colombian president says cocaine is no worse than whiskey. I personally agree what he's saying, but it's like he feels as if we legalize cocaine, we won't have a drug problem. He said it'd just be like a normal thing, like you go to the store to buy a liquor or beer, he said it should be offered on at the drugstores or, like if you're just going shopping. You guys put it in the chat. Let me know if you agree with that. I'm not for sure about that. I do think as far as the effects of drugs and alcohol, it does have some damning effects. Now, drugs, more damning effects. I mean, rapidly. I believe. But because I think even with drugs, and when you're intoxicated, you might not think, in a good mind, but when you add drugs, compound drugs, you tend to be losing your jobs, you start stealing from people, so it has a a major effect on your family, on you, on your health, all kinds of things. Now, alcohol, maybe long-term effects, we could say that. Long-term effects, it takes a longer time for you to see what's what you've done to your family because you need to be a part of AA. Anyway, so Colombia president says cocaine's no worse than whiskey. He said cocaine is no worse than whiskey and is only illegal because it comes from Latin America. That's what he says. This is President Gustavo Petro during a live broadcast of a government meeting. Colombia is the world's biggest cocaine producer and exporter, mainly to United States and Europe. So he's trying to convince probably other world leaders like, hey, cocaine is not bad. Cocaine is actually a good thing. And matter of fact, we are the largest exporters and you should make it legal so we won't have these drug trafficking problems that we have. We wouldn't have these problems if you wouldn't change your laws. Okay. And so it says, and Europe and United States has spent decades fighting against drug trafficking. During a 6-hour minstrel meeting, um, or ministerial meeting, broadcast live for the first time ever. The leftist president said cocaine is illegal because it's made in Latin America and not because it's worse than whiskey. Scientists have analyzed this. Cocaine is no worse than whiskey, he added. You know, he's just talking nonsense right now. He's just talking nonsense. And suggesting that the global cocaine industry could be easily dismantled if the drug were legalized worldwide. If you want peace, you have to dismantle the business of drug trafficking. He said it could be easily be dismantled if you legalize cocaine in the world. It will be sold like wine. So Petro also pointed out that fentanyl is killing Americans and it is not made in Colombia, referring to the opioid responsible for around 75,000 deaths in the United States a year, according to official data. Fentanyl has created a pharmacy drug by North American multinationals, and those who consumed it became addicted, he added. You think drug cartels will not add fentanyl to their drugs only because the probability of your drug users dying from fentanyl is high. So you think you wouldn't do that? You know, wouldn't it be more advantageous for you to, and it's a more business decision if you think about it. Oh, I like my customers to survive, not the end of life customers. I want my customers to survive, unless you're in the mortuary business. You're in the funeral business, okay? Yeah, I'm in the drug and funeral business. Okay, here's your drugs. You die. Make sure you bury your people with me. I'm just saying. It doesn't make any sense. So it says since coming to power in 2022, Petro has attempted to make peace with all of the armed groups that are fueled by drug trafficking in hopes of ending 6 decades of conflicts. Cocaine production in Colombia reached a record high in 2023, jumping 53% of 2,600 tons, according to the UN Office of Drugs and Crime. This is what he says. So, anyway, you guys put it in chat. Let me know what you think. I think it's kind of outrageous. I think it's outrageous for this guy to say, "Oh, you know, it's no bad, no worse than whiskey." I mean, maybe the long term effects. Maybe I could see, you know, as far as your internal organs and long term effects on your family. Yeah, maybe not, but short term effects. We know you know, if you're a cokehead or a crackhead, you do some crazy shit while you're on coke. Not you know, when you're drinking whiskey, you ain't doing the stuff that they doing while they on cocaine. So I don't know how he made that comparison, but he made it anyway. Let me get to some of your comments. Lenny is saying there's not enough drugs in the world or alcohol to go to bed with that. Good thing he in Colombia. Right. Just imagine he will, you know what? And I'm not surprised because this is where they was trying to go. And you know, my thought process is I had to jump to this real quick because if you think about California, Portland, I believe Denver, Washington, all those states that mainly they, you know, actually not necessarily legalize drug use, but you know, they pass out things to make drug use safer, you know. Um, so needles, you know, you could get Narcan just in case you overdose. Um, and you can actually, I think in Portland, you can actually get your drugs tested for fentanyl so you won't overdose. So they have these testing centers. So I could see, you know, some of these liberal nut jobs trying to make the case that, oh, we should legalize drug use. and maybe we'll combat some of the drug use and have less deaths. I just don't see the logic in that. But anyway, I could see that happening. Wyoming gal is saying Oregon decriminalized heroin and other drugs. Our governor is trying to put the genie back in the bottle. Yeah, it's not going to end well. Valerie said, good thing this country don't have a military. Exactly. And Gustav is probably corrupt, maybe that's why he's pushing to get it legal. Lenny is saying legal marijuana. But marijuana is legal in some states, but it's not federally legal. Hanging AZ, I drink whiskey but never tried cocaine. Too old to start. Exactly. I know people that did drugs, and it's not a pretty thing. I can't compare whiskey with cocaine or crack use. It doesn't even compare. Like I said, long term, maybe because I'm thinking of family and your internal organs, but when you're taking it like then and there, is night and day difference. What? You gotta wait till I check to see your work. And you need to go put something on your lips. Go. You and that not in the camera. Go wipe your lips. Anyway. So anyway, my last story before I get off, that's my son. He trying to play in the game room, but no. My last story. This is about the government frivolous spending. This is called the Festivus Report 2024. You see all these pictures. You got Cookie Monsters on here, pigeons. I guess this would be Circus Soleil rats and cocaine uses. It says, last Festivus, we bemoaned the national debt nearing $34 trillion. Let me enlarge this so you guys can see it. I'm starting like mid, page. Anyway, Washington career politicians and bureaucrats have managed to push it beyond $36 trillion. Okay, that's what our national debt is. And our mountain of debt will continue to pile even higher. The Congressional Budget Office predicts we add an average of $2.1 trillion in debt annually for the next decade. According to the Julie House Budget Committee report, the U.S. government will add over $6.4 billion of debt every single day for the next 2 years, borrowing over $268 million every hour. That's insane. 4.4 or $4.5 million every million, and over $74,000 every second. It says this year I'm highlighting a whopping $1 trillion of government waste, including ice skating drag queens, $12 million Las Vegas pickleball complex, 4.8 on Ukrainian influencers, and more. Okay. As always, taking the path of fiscal responsibility is often a lonely journey, but I've been fighting government waste like Doge before Doge was cool, and I will continue to fight against government waste this holiday season. And they put in red text, I have a lot of problems with federal spending, and now is the time to hear all about them. So he goes through, I'm just going to go to what some of these things are talking about. It says ghost town of the government's dime. The federal government spent $10 billion on maintaining, leasing, and furnishing almost entirely empty buildings. This is what Donald Trump was talking about. This is why he said, hey, return back to the office or take the buyout. 2 million federal employees, and they're furnishing offices that's empty because they have a non-mandatory return to work. You could work from home. And why are you leasing the office space? Why are you doing that? You're leasing the office space for what? And you're furnishing an office space for what? It says our government senselessly wastes nearly $10 billion on empty offices. Most federal offices are ghost town, with 17 out of 24 agencies using only 25% of less of their spaces in 2023. Even the busiest offices barely reach 50% capacity. This is ridiculous. And we're spending our money on it. It says, in addition, in a whopping $2 billion annual maintenance cost, the federal government is spending about $5 billion on leases. For what? Despite the empty offices, the federal government also spent $3.3 billion on high-end office commodities between 2020 and 2022. To share just a couple of examples, the CDC fear-mongered the American public into closing schools and wearing ineffective masks was busy installing solar power picnic tables costing a total of $237,000. For what? For your people not to come in office. Another example of outrageous spending comes from pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, PBGC. $15 million splurge on new furniture, even though its offices largely remain empty. Because the federal government did not force their employees back to work after COVID. You forced them to take a vaccine so they could be around people, supposedly. We got to put that in quote. That's supposed to keep you safe. We force you to take a vaccine if you want to work for the federal government. Then after you forced them to take a vaccine, you didn't force them to back to work. I thought they supposed to be safe. So you gave them the option, oh, you could stay at home, but the schools are back open. What's the problem? And then you guys don't realize that they've given a lot of money to child care so people could have child care for their children. You can get free child care. They're giving a lot of subsidies. Matter of fact, in Michigan, if you want to own a child care business, I think they was giving out $85,000 to start up a child care business. Because the problem was, oh, both of us can't be working. Somebody got to stay at home. And then these states are closing down the schools. Maybe they might have another epidemic or pandemic. So anyway, fear mongering amongst the federal government, and they still continue to waste our money. So you didn't force these people back. Another thing that they were talking about, okay, remember, reason why we have this $36 trillion of debt, I won't take the ownership off of Donald Trump, because when he was in office, they did, we got the PPP loans and the EIDL loans, but those are loans. And then, a lot of people got the pandemic unemployment. So that kind of stuff that was enacted under Trump's administration to save businesses. So kudos to that. But you know what really was the tipping point was the opera funds. The opera funds went to cities that were struggling really financially, And these opera funds were not, they had very to little oversight. Now, this pandemic plunder, they talking about this Florida man stole $8 million in COVID relief funds to buy an island. This is some of the things that no oversight, people just like passing out checks, and you know, you just like, okay, oh well. It says what his name is Patrick Parker Wash, a Florida businessman turned pandemic plunder, made headlines for his audacious escapades. He stole $8 million in federal funding. It says the court document illustrate brazen acts of 16 fraudulent applications for PPP loans. These documents outline $11.9 million in requested PPP loan funds, which he managed to obtain 4 million or almost 5 million of those loans. Unsatisfied with one illicit endeavor, he delved in the economic injury disaster loan, which he in an extra $2.8 million through deceptive application. With little oversight over this program, you know, they're saying it's a potential individuals engaged fraudulent activities, potentially stole over $280 billion. You guys go back to some of my old videos. We talked about how the government was trying to crack down on people fraudulent PPP loans. We don't know. We don't know if they're ever going to catch up with these individuals. It says with an additional 123 billion being squandered or misused of COVID relief funds. These losses account for approximately 10% of the $4.2 trillion that the U.S. government has allocated thus far by COVID relief aid. Here's was the sort of endless pot of money that anyone could access. And I don't know if you guys remember me talking about what's the Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood receive PPP loans. Now, and if you know anything about PPP loans, it's different from the EIDL loan. The PPP loan, you don't have to pay back. It was a loan as long as you spend it on, 60% of your overhead costs, which is employees and stuff like that. You don't have to pay it back. And Josh Hawley, Senator Josh Hawley, he revealed that how the hell or why in the hell are we giving Planned Parenthood PPP loans? That doesn't even make any sense. This is a $12 million pickleball. Oops, my bad. $12 million pickleball facility. Department of Interior spent $12 million on a Las Vegas pickleball facility. You can't make this stuff up. Reminds me of China is doing with their empty cities. Valerie is saying Social Security officers needs to open back up like before because the appointment thing is not working. The wait is too long. Democrats have used the FBA vote to benefit everyone except FBA. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Valerie. And we've been, if you, I don't know, Valerie, if you was on my live last stream, what was that, Tuesday? This is Thursday because Wednesday we wasn't on. Tuesday, we talked about the old black Negro got us voting for Democrats, and what's his name? Al Sharpton. He just using, black Negroes, so he could raise money. He could raise money and get his $1 million in bonuses. And we still voting Democrat. For what? Why are we voting Democrat? Now, where was I? Okay. So they're saying that this was a 30-court regional pickleball complex in Las Vegas, Nevada. Apparently, Las Vegas has more pickleball players than Elvis impersonators, and these racket wielding enthusiasts are running out of places to play. The city's pickleball players are in such a pickle that the federal government has set aside 5.43 acres to ensure they have ample space to serve, volley, and smash their way to pickler frame. It says, not to mention the architects of the complex aim to put Las Vegas on global pickleball map by hosting tournaments from local and international levels. Move over, World Series of Poker. There's a new game in town. I don't know why this keep on doing this. The devil is a lie. Now, we talked about political, but this is pretty funny. Taxpayers fund disinformation index, but the real fake news is that it's useful. The state wasted $330,000 to fund censorship on a non-liberal and conservative media. You spent $330,000 to censor conservative and non-liberal media. That doesn't make any sense. It says amongst the 10 riskiest outlets identified by GDI, the New York Post, American Spectator, Newsmax, the American Conservatives, The Blaze, One American News, Daily Wire, Reason, Real Clear Politics, and The Federalist, not towing the line of particular political narrative. So I guess they use Xandr, advertisement firm owned by Microsoft. Who owns Does Microsoft, is that really controlled by Bill Gates still? Probably sure. I'm pretty sure he is a majority owner. And it says other companies took bait and refused to place ads on website that GDI slapped with a risky label. And this was leaked by the Washington Post or Washington Examiner. Now, also $2 million on snacks. They said $2 million grant to study kids looking at Facebook ads about food. Like, what is going on? They spent $2 million to study kids looking at Facebook ads about food. They tried to update a hotel and that's no longer open. They spent about $108,000 on a bath hotel in Nevis, a building that hadn't operated as a hotel for years, with a bathhouse that is boarded up and not in use anymore. It says it received substantial renovation money by the grant from the U.S. Embassy. Another, they saying they spent another $15 million to turn the IRS into an unconstitutional force to prepare, file, and audit your hard-earned money. It says Democrats said that they passed the so-called Inflation Reduction Act to make everyday items more affordable for hardworking Americans struggling to make ends meet. They are set aside from doing nothing to actually lower inflation. They also managed to slip $15 million for the task force, whose purpose is to turn the Internal Revenue Service into a unholy force of tax preparing, filing, and auditing via their direct file pilot program. You know, you can file your taxes on actual the IRS.com or .gov. It says the plan was to spend millions to see if the IRS could take over tax preparation, because who wouldn't want the same people auditing them to also do their taxes? It says Democrats handed off the study to the left-leaning think tank with ties to Obama and Clinton independence. Sure, if you squint hard enough. Okay. It says, according to the Treasury Inspector for Tax Administration, about 12% of taxpayers were eligible to use the direct file pilot program, which could cost up to $240 million a year, burning $15 million to study a system that's already exists in the private sector and is free to use. Sounds like classic government waste. This is crazy. They spent $400 million to determine if lonely rats see cocaine more than happy rats. That's what it says, you guys. It says, despite spending over $1 trillion to try and solve the drug crisis, cocaine, one of the most harmful and addictive drugs, continues to gain popularity in communities nationwide. Significant funding has been allocated to study the cocaine addiction, but there seems to be no solution in sight. This raises the question, how are these scientific studies and grants really using tax dollars? One of the studies examining cocaine use took place at New York University. They received $419,000 from Department of Health and Human Services to investigate whether rats placed in positive environments will be more likely to abstain from cocaine than rats in negative and isolated environments. While $500,000 may just be small nibble in the grand scheme of things, but the nation growing deficit, those nibbles adds up fast. What were the findings? I'm trying to figure out what were the findings. The more happier you are, the more less less apt to use drugs, maybe. I'm not for sure. It says following lockdowns, NYU determined the isolation of people led to increased level of anxiety, depression, loneliness, and drug uses. No duh. This is the last one I'm going to talk about before I get off. It says, hold on to your steering wheels. DOE, Department of Energy, is revving up to burn taxpayer dollars. Remember, you guys remember, what's the guy, the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg? He gave a talk. He was on some news outlet, and they were questioning him about how many stations have they built, charging stations have they built, because they had $7.5 billion or $75 billion, something astronomical. And he said, oh, we have 6 charging station built. And he said it proud, like, oh, we have 6-star charging stations built. And they were like, dude, you had like $75 billion. That's all you built is 6 charging stations. You only freaking build 6 charging stations. Now, this is just something to add to that. It says $15.5 billion to push Americans towards electric vehicles they don't want. Electric vehicle owners report to have nearly 80% more problems than owners of gas-powered vehicles, facing issues like unreliable performance, difficult finding charging stations, EV batteries struggling in cold weather, long charging times, maintenance costs, and limiting driving range. Despite of growing lists of headaches of EV owners, the Biden administration is eager to waste your hard-earned dollars on unpopular transitions. It says Americans have spoken and then overwhelmingly prefer reliable gas-powered vehicles. So why is the government pouring more money into EVs that face more challenges and less demand? It says vehicle manufacturers are feeling the sting, producing vehicles that consumers don't want. This is why Chrysler is struggling right now. The Chrysler was just stupid. Yeah, and I'm talking about Stellantis. They tried to create like a high-end maybe line, vehicles that people can not necessarily afford. The people that actually work at their facilities, they couldn't afford. I mean, they got the that ugly car, the long, it's not the Cherokee, but the longer one, but it's real ugly. Nobody wants that. And then you got this EV Jeep Cherokee that you have a massive recall on. Massive recall. I told you we have one of those. And we just been driving it as a regular gas powered vehicle because they said if you plug it up, your house might catch on fire. So it's like, okay, I guess we just won't use the battery anymore. So it's just like, and that vehicle costs almost close to $60,000. It's a lease, but just think if you was driving it. Keratin, you're absolutely right. The Wagoneer is the most expensive, ugliest piece of machinery out there. But you got people, and I think the price, I think it starts off at $70,000. Let me see. Yeah, I think the MSRP price $70,000 for a new one. You got some at $84,000. But anyways, but who could afford that type of car payment? And so you have the government, which I'm glad he's out, not in office anymore. Joe Biden and his crazy Green New Deal or whatever the hell they was trying to do. You have them trying to push these EV mandates on you. And then while the car company is trying to meet those EV mandates, not demands, mandates by the federal government, and then they're wasting a lot of money. It says Ford reported a whopping $1.3 billion in loss in its EV division in the first quarter alone. Lucid Motors reported losses of $227,000 per sold car. That's crazy. Rivian reported losses of $1.45 billion. These numbers are so big that they make my head spin faster than the Tesla on ludicrous mode. And it says still, Biden determined to throw $12 billion at automakers to push EV productions forward. As if they think throwing taxpayers' dollars at the problem will magically fix it. Well, that's their main solution for everything. Throw a lot of money at it. Look at Kamala Harris' campaign. She thought if she threw a lot of money in her campaign, she would actually triumph over Donald Trump, and she didn't. She spent, what they say, almost $1.4 billion. $1.4 billion on her campaign, and she still lost. And it's saying of 12 billion and 10 billion will come from the Energy Department. In addition, to 2 billion will come from the Inflation Reduction Act's grant. And that's not all. The energy department will also make $3.5 billion available to expand domestic manufacturing of batteries for EVs and the U.S. grid, despite the fact that most battery materials are imported abroad. They are, and this is when we're talking about slave trade and slave labor and all that stuff at these manufacturing plants or these mining facilities. This is slave labor. Nobody's talking about that though. Everybody's talking about, oh, we need diversity, equity, inclusion, and let's drive EV vehicles. But you don't care how that shit got into your vehicles. Somebody say something. You don't care nothing about that. Oh, we need to make green zero emissions and diversity, equity, and inclusion. What about the diversity, equity, and inclusion of the people that's in those cobalt mines and those lithium mines? I guess that doesn't matter as long as you get to drive your luxury vehicle. Anyway, so we'll start at page 13 tomorrow, okay? Or actually page 14. Let me get to some of your comments. Mulatto rights activists call ICE every day until every illegal immigrant is deported. They almost go. They almost go. Carrington is saying brother-in-law still got his first Scat Pack Charger, and he owns since new in 2017. Okay. I like my Jeep with an inline 6, the 4.0 best motor ever built. Yes, my husband, he sold his Jeep to my sister. I swear that thing probably got about 250,000 miles on it. It's a V8 though. It's a V8, and it's still running. Still running though. That's when they was making Jeep really last long, and they didn't really have no problems out of those. I think his is a 2000, and it might be a 2007 Jeep Cherokee. My friend's neighbor, also a friend of mine, his wife has a Wagoneer. I think they just is the ugliest thing ever. Lenny is saying findings were Dr. Fauci got high on your stash and tax dollars was doling it out to Hunter Biden. Exactly. She's in debt now, of course. That Jeep Cherokee, I mean that Wagoneer costs about, I think I've seen some as low as 65,000, but if you say, oh, I want a sunroof, or I want a player, the screen, touch screen, it probably goes up to 70,000. You guys, okay. So that's it for our live stream today. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. Tomorrow, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, we will be live on Unpopular Opinion with me and my co-host, Miss Super Producer. So you guys stay tuned for that. And once again, I'm sending all my good to you. I will talk to you. You know what? I think I might go live tomorrow. Friday, I normally don't go live, but since I got this other stuff to do, I'll see you tomorrow. All right. Have a good one.